Okay, let's get this started. So we are here with a spicy topic, why self-serve analytics fail, and how metadata can solve them. But before we get started, maybe we go through a short round of introductions and then we can get to the meat of it.
Cool, thank you. So I'm Sarah. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Euno. And Euno is a metadata management platform built for governance, automation, and AI context. And, in the past 20 years, before I started running Euno, I worked for various industries. I led startups in healthcare, in cybersecurity, in fintech, always great focus on data and AI. And we experienced all those problems that we experience today: inconsistencies, misalignments, silos, duplicates, the need to consolidate things, but then the need to again give everyone the freedom to create, and nothing changes. I think what is a dramatic change is AI, because while for years we could somewhat rely on people to know, or some veteran analysts to remember what's the table that you can query and trust the data. With agents, if you don't have technological way to tell them, they will not know. So we're here with on a mission to leverage metadata to help agents understand the data, and I'll tell you all about it.
Sounds good.
Happy to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm JB. I started, a little background real quick, started using DBT, I think 2018, 2019, kind of early days. Did some contributions to the projects and the tools around it, early days too, open source community. So, huge love for the tool and love going to Coalesce. I work these days as a head of AI architecture at a consulting firm called Astrodata, but been on the customer side a ton, deploying DBT, working in semantic layer outputs downstream, and kind of actively seeing this sort of promise to fail life cycle. And really excited to talk about this today because I've been skeptical in the past. I'm starting to have my mind changed around the current state today, and really pumped to dive in with you all.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and hello to you over there from behind the podium. My name's Jeremy Blaney, and I work at Tableau, where I lead a team of customer success managers whose sole job it is to help our customers basically get value from the investments that they've made in Tableau. Outside of work, I teach a course on analytics up at Tufts University. I've been doing the data thing for a really long time now. I checked sort of all the boxes over many, many years. I started my career as a practitioner, a data practitioner first in the Air Force and then in industry at Bank of America. From there, I went into the world of big tech and supported various customer success teams and go-to-market teams as well. This idea of self-service analytics is something I am quite passionate about, but I think we all know that self-service analytics only works if you make the right investments, not just in technology, but people and process as well. And I'm excited to dig into a little bit of that with y'all today.
Awesome. And I'm Solmaz. Most recently, I was head of data at Shopify for close to 9 years, overseeing data science, data platform, AI, and have lived through so many of these challenges with stories to tell. And after that, I've transitioned to advising companies and have been close to the AI space, started from research all the way to practitioners. And when I met Sarah and Euno team, it just was a product that I wish it existed when I was running practical teams. So really excited to be here. I think we have a good group with a lot of experiences, both positive and negative, in how to shape the space. Okay, so let's start with the elephant in the room. Why do most self-serve analytics initiatives fail to meet expectations? And what are some biggest challenges data teams and the business teams on the other side face when they get started on this?
Who wants to kick it off? All right, well, I'll kick it off by just reiterating some of what I already said in my introduction. The easiest part of any transformation is the purchase and deployment of technology. I realize that might be a controversial statement, but I've seen it time and time again. You buy technology, you implement the technology. There's work to do, don't get me wrong, but it's not super difficult to do. In addition to deploying technology, there needs to be equal investment in process change and skills building and everything else related to people. And time again, I see organizations not investing in that. And so fast forward, self-service analytics, while in practice sounds great, before you know it, because there was no thought about what governance processes need to be implemented within an organization, you end up with 10 different sources of truth with regards to dashboards and all these other things that ultimately erode trust in the whole. And when there is no trust in the whole, adoption goes down and people begin to wonder, now why people aren't using this tech platform that they spent all this money on.
Totally agree with Jeremy.
Everyone
And-
is passionate about this. Go
yeah.
ahead.
And look, I'm sure many of you all have been in the organization where a promise is made, some tool is going to come in, save the day, then experimentation framework comes in and you're releasing features every week, and you on the DBT modeling side need to keep up with that. Maybe you get promises early on that you are supposed to deliver, and now you've got this 4,000 line SQL statement that's in DBT. You did your best with it. You're trying to iterate. When do you have time to do that self-service outcome? Ultimately things come back to the data team, request, response, lifecycle. It's tough, and there's a lot of pressure on practitioners, I think, to try to hit those promises that get passed downstream. And my kind of hope, I think a collective hope, is that the current technology suite can kind of pair with you as practitioners to kind of get to that next step and bring in practical, but things that can fit in a more, in your very busy schedule, capabilities to get to that end state.
Yeah, and I think this just all touches this endless tension between the freedom to innovate with data and governance and centralization. And there is like this, it's always like a pendulum. So you centralize everything to gain governance, and you build a semantic layer and DBT models and marts, and you enforce everyone to use them. And then you gradually, let go, because you need that self-serve experience, because the business moves fast. No one wants to slow them down. No business team will wait a week for a metric to be built in DBT. So they will find their workarounds, but you don't want them to find their workarounds, so you teach them how to do that. But you cannot govern them, not for real. I mean, they'll do whatever they can with the tools that they have to deliver results fast. You lose control. You're out of control. You start centralizing and governing again, and then they lose their freedom. They fight for their freedom. They begin creating chaos in Excel. You're saying, oh no, just not Excel. So let's go back. Let's give them the self-serve experience. And that's going on and on and on and on.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that pendulum. I don't know if there's a data person when they hear the word self-serve and they don't feel like a shudder inside because of all these bad experiences. But also I have, talked to many business users in small companies, large companies, and the pressure they're under to also deliver is real. And I think the self-serve fails them as well, because, there was these meetings where a business wanted to discuss churn, but the meeting started by the marketing analyst saying churn is this number, finance analyst saying a different number, and partnerships and a different one. So the whole meeting wasn't about churn, but was about digging into this data. And as a result, actually, the trust in the data and the data team goes down. And I think trust is the main currency of a data group. Like, people don't want data, they want insights, they want action. So when that trust is gone, both from the business and from the data team perspective, like, no one is winning. So it seems like we have all our battle scars, but maybe we can take a step back and say, technologies like DBT and all the tools built on top of it to allow you to build semantics and all of that, they have gone quite far, right? Like you mentioned, JB, at 2018, you started building with DBT, and all of us have been in the space even before then, and there wasn't really a common language or tool to talk about data models in a sort of practical way. And so now we have these tools. Why haven't we arrived in this euphoria of being able to do self-serve analytics, you think?
Well, I think it's exactly, it touches exactly to what we said before. The fact that we have the technology doesn't mean that we have the processes in place. And, I spoke with a prospect once, and they said, well, we are highly centralized. We're actually going to punish anyone that builds something outside of DBT. It's like draconian governance framework. And I was shocked. He would say, it's a draconian. He said it for real. It wasn't a joke. And that's not reality, because the business puts a lot of pressure to get results, and we cannot keep up. So DBT is an engineering practice. Okay, analytics engineering practice. It's not a business practice. Although it was the attempt to market it as something very simple, very intuitive, very friendly, it is. But you need an engineering mindset. You need an engineering time frame. You need to think like an engineer. You don't think like a business person when you build DBT models. So this also adds to this difficulty. If you expect everyone to use those tools, you cannot turn everyone into engineers. You need those analysts and those business people to think about the business question, not to think about the PRs and the data models. So I think that's the reason why we're not seeing it, solving the problem.
And look, each problem that existed in 2018 or whatever for self-service as a solution still kind of exists now. Is a stakeholder going to get an answer and misinterpret what it means? Is somebody going to word a question wrong and think they got year over year, but they got aggregate? Can they trust that? Is it certified? Do I need a data team member to certify it? Is it coming from the right table, right? Imagine getting all those raw ingredients together. If you don't have a proper foundation to do that, if you don't have an opinionated framework to get to that point, it's still going to be the same challenges, even if it's an AI wrapper. If anything, people are more used to that user experience these days. They might be more likely to adopt it. Same challenges. So we have to solve each component part of those in order to get to that point. And there are, again, some tangible pieces to get there. There are tooling to help you get there. It still does require time. It still requires a sort of construct on these modern frameworks to work well, which we could dive into. But yeah, that piece is still necessary, and those problems still exist.
Yeah, for me, I think the aha moment when I started talking to Sarah was that for years we thought we would build this beautiful walled gardens of beautiful data warehouses with very good definitions, all unit tested, everything, and then we would open the door to the business and life would be beautiful ever after. But that's not the reality. No matter how good your data warehouse and your just analytics is, business moves faster. So I think tools and sort of just a community that believes that's the reality and how we can build for that reality where these two are going to diverge and how we bring it back together over and over and over. I think those are the ones that are going to help us. And I think metadata is definitely one of the things that would get into that. So actually, with that in mind, there is another thing we keep hearing about, and it's in the era of AI, with the floodgates of AI agents being opened every day, every hour, there's a new one. There's big ones like Cloud and ChatGPT and Snowflake Intelligence, but also smaller ones, Zenletics, TextQL, and I'm sure during this time we're in this room, 3 new ones launched because it's really exciting era for it. How do you see those? Do you see them solving problems? How do you see them play in this ecosystem that we're talking about?
So let's explain something about AI agents, maybe, just to get things like in some structure. I think every tool you mentioned, Coalesce Analyst, Databricks Genie, Claude, ChatGPT, now we have Zenlytic, TextQL, Dot, Jedify, you name it, right? There are tons of them. Tableau Next, Ask Sigma, Threads for Hex, every BI tool as well. They all follow the same concept. LLM works. Right? They use some engine by OpenAI or Anthropic. So LLM works. They get business questions. They get the intent. They're able to translate it to SQL. That works. But to generate the right SQL is the challenge, right? So they all come up with this concept, okay, you need a governed semantic layer. If you have, one source of truth with metrics, with semantics that are able to consistently map the business question to their exact accurate place in the data, it's going to work. Of course it's going to work. So we see all those pilots with 20 tables, 30 metrics, and like magic, it works. You ask a question, you get an answer. Now try to scale that. Now you need to build 2,000 metrics. Okay, we can get the project started. Everyone's excited in the beginning. After 1 month of building metrics, some people abandon it because they have other work to do. It's never covering everything. It's always lagging. And while we're doing that, our business people are creating more stuff in Tableau and in Looker and in Power BI, and you'll never keep up. So are we going to abandon the AI agent project? I don't know. I'm here to see, but I haven't met a single successful deployment beyond POCs. And I'm talking to dozens of data people every month. Sorry about the bad news.
I think, Sarah, your passion comes through.
Shots fired. Shots
Yes.
fired. Here's how I sort of see where we are and where we're going. If I were to ask the room a question, how many of you would say you don't have enough work to occupy your 40 hours a week? My guess is you would probably say you are overworked, you're overburdened, you need some help in order to navigate your weeks more efficiently. I do think AI agents are going to help you and all other data practitioners out there be more efficient at your jobs. I'm already seeing people use agents in Tableau Cloud and Tableau Next navigate their day a bit more efficiently. Hey, I need help writing this gnarly calculation within my ABI environment. Previously, I would have to go and just troll an endless amount of forms to figure out how to write that calculation. Guess what? I can talk to something right then and there and get some real-time guidance so I can move beyond that roadblock and keep going. So are AI agents going to make us more efficient as practitioners? Absolutely. But to your point, all of this is still very early days. there needs to be more than just calculation help that these things provide to us in order for them to be like broadly adopted and integrated deeply into our workflows.
Did you want to add? In my experience, I've seen the agents most useful with the teams that have a good understanding of data. So FP&A teams that may not have had the skills to write the SQL. So from human to SQL, the models do pretty decent job. But if you don't know which table is the right one to query and you have no sense of reality, so like, if you see a number for revenue, it's wrong because you've looked at the bank account this morning, that's very easy to know. But if it's something like marketing or orders or something like that, where that context is not inherent in what you deal with every day, it's very hard. And I'm really hopeful for these agents to take on more, because all of us also want to spend that time on more creative aspects of data. That's why we got into this space. So there's a lot of also talk about how critical governance is in AI, and it's not new. We've talked about governance for years. There's lots of governance projects I'm sure everyone is working on and has been working on. What has changed, and how do you see this sort of growing as a problem with the AI and self-serve coming to play?
So I think, governance is a word that we need to sometimes maybe spend some time and explain what it means. Because in the past, governance only meant access, control, permissions, let's just make sure agents don't access confidential or sensitive data. So that's one aspect of governance. Important. Let's make sure they only access PII-free stuff. All right. It's not easy. There is a broad range of cybersecurity companies and data companies that handle that. But there is another aspect of governance, which I think is more relevant to what we're talking about, and that's how can I trust the number that I'm getting? How can I be sure that it's actually querying a table that has that accurate information and not some spreadsheet that someone created sometime, gave it the same name, and there is a report querying this spreadsheet. And this aspect of governance is tricky because for many years you needed to do a lot of manual work to get that level of governance. And I think that's an area where tools can help a lot because they can automate a lot. And if you get control over how things are calculated, what exists to begin with? What exists in Tableau in all those workbooks? What logic it's based on? Custom SQL stuff, calculated fields, and DBT models, Snowflake views, Snowflake tables, joined with spreadsheets in custom SQL again. Like if you have good visibility of that, and who created that, and who's using that in practice, and what it built on and how it's calculated, that's a lot. That's a big step forward. So that's what I call governance.
I think a big piece for me is, to use DBT as an example, since we're at its conference, the ability assuming we're going with the collective understanding that like the self-service answer could be agentic workflows, it could be AI or otherwise. DBT, as an example, needs enough consistent information, similar to what we talked about yesterday with OSI, to be able to traverse your effectively DBT lineage or knowledge graph or otherwise to make those answers, those self-service outputs, not perfectly deterministic, as we know, that's not how LLMs work, but deterministic enough, given the proper input, to be reliable, right? That principle, that component, it spans beyond DBT, your semantic views and your BI tool of choice or wherever you might define them. Upstream, that lineage component. The ability to answer questions reliably, I think we are kind of seeing a need for a collective and consistent understanding, not meta properties defined differently over here, for that LLM, AI output or otherwise, to be consistent enough for people to build a trust that isn't so wholly different from the data team certifying something to be of interest, to be self-service adoption capable.
Awesome. It sounds like you just queued up my next question, JB. So it's key, that consistent understanding, that context understanding that scales. That's what metadata, I feel like, is here to solve. And it seems like metadata was the missing link in the prior effort. So if the idea is to use metadata as this missing layer, why is leveraging metadata so central in solving the problem as we go forward?
Obviously, I have a lot to say about that. So, I think the situation you need to think about is you're using an agent, and you've built some semantic models. You have sales cohorts, usage cohorts, governed, and as semantic views in Snowflake. And then Snowflake Intelligence gets a question, what was the churn in the past year? And with that question, this churn model is built in 20 different workbooks in Tableau by the product team, finance team, FP. Different domains define churn a bit differently. Some define the same way, but with they just created duplicates. And that's where metadata comes into play. So the agent asks the question. It didn't find the answer in the semantic views. It's his sales cohorts, it's his usage cohorts. It might come up with its own, churn model that he finds in the internet or something, but that wouldn't be the right number. So then it gets to the metadata, MCP server, API, doesn't matter. It's all the same thing, just different protocols to retrieve context. And context can be, okay, I've searched everywhere and I found 20, 30 different definitions for churn or abandoned customer or left customer. Everything that is semantically equivalent. So we have the technology to do that. I know that out of them, only 5 are actually built on certified assets. How? Because I know the lineage very precisely, and I know exactly how this calculated field or measure is computed and what is querying, and I know if it's in DBT in the gold layer or it's a raw table that is not considered trusted. So I know what's trusted. I know that out of these, only 2 are actually used by anyone in the organization in the past 60 days. The other were created in some workbook, abandoned, no one's using them. That's a lot of context. And now I know the logic, I know the code. I can give you the SQL to generate this calculation, although it was built somewhere in Tableau. And with that context, the agent is now able to either give the user 2 options. Well, we found a definition in product, it's certified, it's used, it's actually legit, but it looks at active users. And I found another definition in finance, it's also legit, it's also certified, it's also used, but it looks at paying customers. Which one you're interested in when you're asking about churn? Maybe I also have the context of the person asking. I know he belongs to the product domain, so I also can tell him, okay, that's the most relevant definition for you. And then the agent is able to generate a reliable query. It's also able to provide some proof. This is querying this table. This is how it's calculated. These are the people using it. This is the dashboard where this metric is exposed. That's how metadata helps. It can give the agent real-time context that is based on deep pre-processing of metadata. This processing cannot happen in real time. Downstream, lineage, usage, this labeling based on certification rules, this cannot happen in real time. Metadata needs to be pre-processed, but then it can be surfaced in real time at query time to the agents. So that's how metadata can help.
I'll just say a kind of quick anecdote. Just similarly, I've seen a lot of clients like at Astrodata where folks will kind of feel like, oh, it's too much of it's a long-term roadmap to get to that point to have anything of interest. It's a POC, as we said, right? I think a big thing, especially with just the push, as many of you all have seen on the sort of executive side for like building an AI strategy, getting to that point of that future state, and then on the practitioner side, getting something useful, something that can alleviate the load. The business is moving faster upstream. How on earth can we keep up as a data team? Bringing in some adoption for sort of hydrating that metadata, hydrating my DBT project, practical things to kind of say descriptions, meta property, consistency and governance through your DBT project, semantic views isn't just glue work. It's not just getting something out of one super data superhero at your company's head. It is foundational. It is essential. It's not a second afterthought anymore, and it shouldn't be as you're building your DBT models and beyond.
Yeah, I feel like good metadata basically scales your best data scientists and allows them to impact everything, both with human and with agents, and it's definitely useful to invest in it. So going from that, we earlier made this playful comment about the number of AI agents coming up in analytics space. We also see similar trends in MCPs, right? New ones coming up from different tools, and that's exciting. But when you look at that landscape, what are some things that you're hoping that the MCPs in this space would unlock, and what are also the challenges? Or if someone in the audience is trying to adopt one of them, what, in your experience, what signifies a good one to adopt versus one that needs further work?
Maybe I'll just chime in really briefly. I think the practice of analytics is fundamentally changing, right? Dashboards are not dying despite what many people are saying folks are still going to get around a table at a weekly staff meeting and look at a dashboard and say, we made some decisions last week. How are the numbers changing last week to this week? Let's make some new decisions, rinse, repeat. But between those staff meetings, questions are going to come up, and people in some cases are going to go to dashboards to answer those questions, and in other cases are going to want to and have long wanted to go to a chat-like interface to just ask an agent that question. Hey, I've got a question about revenue or customer success scores or whatever. That work today is largely done, or that practice of asking a question is largely done within an analytics and business intelligence environment, but rarely is all of your work done there. Work happens in Slack, work happens in Teams, work happens in Claude, ChatGPT, Workday. I mean, list the application, that is where work is done. And I'm really excited about like MCPs standing up, and Tableau MCP in particular, because I think it creates like this wonderful interface that allows all of this to come together in a way that like fundamentally benefits your business user. They're able to have that experience wherever work happens.
I'm very excited about that because all of us here have been so tired of answering how do you measure the ROI of your data team. And the fundamental problem was decisions were happening based on data, but decisions never happen in your BI layer. They happen somewhere else. And now I think MCPs for the first time allow us to basically listen on the background and see which decisions or which actions were taken marginally, not just as a result of data, but in help of data. And I think it just closes that feedback loop that for years we've wanted to close down. So it's all very exciting, and we're almost running out of time, so this is going to be our last question. But let's talk about future. Most people agree that having a source of truth in dbt, having a metadata layer, having everything aligned metrics is a big step forward. But many organizations also still struggle in reality to keep that source of truth up to date, even with the upfront efforts that we spend in there. And then there's also a lot of push, as we talked about, in adopting AI, both from the business, but also within the data teams. So with all of that, some data teams as a result say like, well, it's so overwhelming to have to build this central source of truth and maintain it. So maybe we'll wait for this migration or this refactor to be over, and then we'll tackle that. What do you think of that? How should teams proceed?
Well, I mean, we wrote on our booth, don't wait on AI, and we mean it. And I think you will always have work to do. So I said it before, you will never complete the semantic layer project, so just build a few metrics and start iterating with AI. And if you feed your agent with context from metadata, it is able to find things also outside this curated semantic layer. If you're using pre-processing of metadata to certify things, it can also get the context whether it can trust or not this calculation. So you can start iterating with that. And keep in mind another thing. Let's imagine this perfect world. And I just had this conversation with two data leaders here that sit in the crowd. You have a semantic layer that covers everything. And every business user has an agent that works. They ask a question, they get a reliable answer. They ask another question, they get a reliable answer. They even ask things about insights. Give me the projection for sales. They get an amazing analysis. So they won't do this every day from scratch. So they will want to create a report with their chatbot, and I want to report the first widget will be the sales projection. Then for every sales rep, I want their performance, and please refresh the report every day. And if you can just send it to my peers, and that's a dashboard, right? And then you want to save it somewhere because this set of queries, it needs to be refreshed every day. So then you need some storage, and then it has some lineage, right? Because it's querying some tables. We call it a BI tool, right? That's really a BI tool, what a BI tool is. So what I'm saying, we just changed the consumption layer. And when AI will work, we're going to end up with every business user creating its own report. Think about that. Now, why use the semantic definition when I can say, take the churn from the semantic layer, but please, just for this calculation, deduct the renewals because I don't want to take them into account. And, well, now I have also conflicts within my agent in this, one person's BI tool. So it's like the same problems we have now, just at an exploding, rate. So if you wait, it will not save anything. We need the tools to be able to control that, to know that, what's created, how it's calculated, who's using it, how much it's used, what's the difference, what's the conflicts, and so on.
Go ahead, yeah.
If self-service feels far away because you're migrating something huge or your project looks wonky or whatever it might be, that's okay. Let the fact that we're using Copilot tools and otherwise speed you up. That context that you add to the project at least speeds you up. You are vital to that self-service end state. There's a lot of work to be done to get there, as we're talking about tooling, hydration of metadata, et cetera. To get to that point, we need to, as analytics engineers, we have a lot of pressure. We move very fast. Getting to the point where we allow, again, even just additional context in our project to speed up our work is huge. And I think a lot of us are adopting that, but we've seen, like, practically with that example I started building, that metadata can help you work faster. And it really is there, and it's at least a starting point alongside that huge migration to get to that next stage.
Don't wait, get started. We're at time.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.